Hello everybody, welcome back to Making Records with Eric Valentine. That's me. I want to do just a little update, stuff that's been happening, and there's been more, more of these promo video things that I've been doing. There's just been a lot of that lately, but there was an opportunity to do some more recording, so we'll be able to share that a little bit. So as you can see, right now I am in Topanga. So we're, getting a little break from the winter. Going to spend a little time in Topanga here. It is beautiful here right now. Oh my goodness, man! California weather. There's nothing quite like it. You barely know it's winter. It's really interesting. It's it can get a bit chilly at night, maybe high 30s, low 40s, but then during the day, it'll get into the 70s. There's like this, almost 40-degree temperature swing every day. It's really crazy, but certainly lovely. And so we're enjoying hanging out here. So I am back in the Topanga, what used to be my control room in Topanga, or really just like the music room here. And I got to kind of reclaim this as a music space. It got converted into a yoga studio. I don't know, you can kind of see some of the accoutrements that you would have in a yoga studio, but they left a lot of the other stuff up. The whatever diffuser cabinet doors and stuff, those seem to fit in for everybody in the yoga world. Apparently there's some aesthetic crossover between control rooms and yoga studios. Yeah, control room studios and yoga studios. And it was interesting being back in this room after the big journey of acoustic chase in the control room in Vermont, the new control room in Vermont. Because that space, I did these VPR panels and ended up doing a bunch of tubes. And this room is no tubes. It's all absorptive material. You can't see any of it because it's behind this cloth, but all of these walls are, an acoustic fabric, and behind that is about 20 inches of just, stacked up mineral wool. And so that was the approach that I took with this one. And, it is interesting being back in here again. And, I think, again, that this room would probably benefit from some tubes. I haven't had a chance to graph it again. And I was very, very fortunate. There's a gentleman I'm working with right now. He's in the process of redoing his control room. So he is making available for me his Strauss monitors. So I have a pair of the MF4s in here. They're not, they're sort of like just the one size down from the ones that I have, the MF2s. But they're, equally incredible sounding. So it's, kind of cool to be able to hear these pretty good size, Strauss monitors in this room after everything I had done in Vermont. And definitely the Vermont room is definitely the next level. This one, I kind of like I put all the absorptive stuff up, and even there's like a soffit that goes around the top corner of the room, and all of that is filled with additional mineral wool, and so it's really quite a lot in the room. The ceiling is not really treated, it's vaulted, but that's exposed wood up there. If you're trying to compare sort of like pound for pound of absorptive stuff, I didn't go quite as far in this room as I did in the Vermont room. And the difference is noticeable. Where I got in the Vermont room, I think is, it's definitely a step up from this. It was interesting to experience that, to come back in here. And, when I was working in here, I was using a trim-off system to just get the speakers closer to that finish line, and the trim-off did help in this room a lot. And right now I didn't have room to bring it. I brought like the most stripped down setup you could possibly imagine. It's just like an Apollo 8. I brought my Studio Mac, and that's it. That's pretty much some cables, and that's it. So it's really, really stripped down here. And so, yeah, Like, this room is very cool. It was a really cool, you know, step along the way of trying to figure out, you know, what really works. And the Vermont room was definitely another step forward in that process. That room, the low end in that room, is definitely the best I've ever had, for sure, in the Vermont control room. So, you know, I was happy to sort of feel like all that effort was not totally for nothing. And you know, I miss it a little bit when I'm here. I don't have to do super critical stuff here, but you know, still there's stuff going on, and you know, I'm pretty spoiled in the new Vermont control room. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. So there was that. Things are continuing to progress. The last big, you know, sort of construction project going on in the Vermont spot is the deck. And so the deck was pretty much done by the time we took off to come out here to California. So here's a quick video. You can kind of just take a peek at what that looks like. All right, it's happening. We got ourselves a deck that's actually safe to run around on now. Look at that. Oh my goodness. And you might be able to see it, but there are just tiny bits of snow coming down. We're getting it done just in time. What do you think, kiddo? You like the deck?
Yeah.
Yeah? I think Max likes it too. He's using the wood scraps to have something to chase or chew on or something. I don't know. So as you can see, like it's a nice big space up there, and in that clip I didn't even go around the corner where it's even, you know, sort of wider section on that side, but it's a beautiful space up there. They did an amazing job. It was a huge project. You know, when you go down this road of like getting, you know, structural engineer and architects and all these people involved, you know, everything just kind of like expands. You know, it's not you can't just like hammer up some 2x4s and put up a deck, you know. And so that thing is insanely strong. It, you know, at this point, I think it's probably going to hold the building up, you know, more so than the building holding up the deck. And I just, man, I cannot wait until the next spring and summer when we're going to be able to put some loungers out there, put some places to sit and enjoy that space, and go up there and just you know, hang out in that incredible space. It's going to be really, really beautiful. So, you know, that place is really properly like going to be done-ish. You know, early next year. I'll be back there early next year, and you know, put the finishing sort of aesthetic touches on the control room, start really buttoning things up, and really get down to business in that place. And it's pretty exciting to actually really feel like the light at the end of the tunnel is really getting here. So that's cool. And you may have already seen this, but you know, I didn't put this one on the Making Records YouTube channel because it was just pure marketing stuff. But I'm really proud of this one. It was really fun to do, super quick, and just, you know, like it sort of came together in a really cool way that I wasn't really the plan at the outset. And so it was this like really fast talking thing, and you know, I came with the idea to do that just to solve the problem, because it's like, wow, I'm supposed to make a video that's only like a minute long. I ended up going longer than that, even as fast as I was trying to talk. But I ended up going longer than that, but just to try and fit everything in, you know, about this new 500 series EQ. You know, it does a million things, and I was like, how am I possibly going to actually cover all this in a minute-long video? And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll just make it part of the shtick here. And so it was me just trying to talk as fast as I can, which I don't really do, you know, like I've never had to even try to do that. And so that was pretty funny. Here's some outtakes of me trying to be fast talking guy. Hello everybody, I'm Eric Valentine. I'm talking really fast because the new, no other way really fast because there's no, really fast because of the new UTEQ, because of the new, Hey everybody, I'm Eric Valentine. Hey
Hey everybody, I'm Eric Valentine. I'm talking really fast because the new Undertone Audio UTEQ500 does so much that there's no other way I can fit it all into a 1-minute video.
So it's pretty funny, me, tripping over my own tongue there a whole lot. And it was interesting, when I first started, I couldn't believe how bad I was at it. I could barely get, halfway through the first sentence. I definitely had to break it up in chunks, and I think my issue is mostly just being able to memorize all the words. Like there's not a chance I could ever be an actor. I just cannot remember dialogue like that. My brain doesn't work that way. But in little bites, I could sort of start to remember things, and then get the pace of the delivery up. And it was interesting. By the end of it, and I came back, I think a second day, and tried to do more of it to finish, just kind of get some of it a little bit better. And by the second day, I actually, started to get reasonably okay at it. And it's just that same thing I learn over and over again. It's like, it's really all about just doing it. It's like the more you do it, the better you get. It really does just come down to practicing things. And it's something that I'm really going to emphasize. I'll talk about it more even in this thing, because there's more of me like playing instruments and stuff. It's going to be really important down the road when I get deeper into the making record stuff and what I plan to do with that. The other thing that was just totally random that ended up happening with this thing is that I was originally planning to do 2 voices myself. And so I had my fast talking guy voice, and then put on another voice that would do the sort of call and response moments. And then I was doing a bath with Sagan, and he was asking, occasionally he'll ask about whatever I'm working on or whatever, and he sees the little videos that we make, and he sees the setup, and he's been sort of in and around that stuff and understands basically, that I do that. And so we were talking about it, and then I just had the thought of wow, I wonder if he could say these lines. And I asked him, do you want to say stuff in the video? He's like, yeah, Dad. And so, we got out of the bathtub, and for this one I actually had a script written, and so I started, telling him what the lines are to see if he could say them. He's 5 years old, and I was totally blown away. He was super in it. We had a great time, and he did an amazing job learning these lines, and words, and even individual syllables that he had never pronounced before, and had to sort of figure out on the spot. So I have the whole audio clip of me doing it. There's no video associated with this, but here you can check it out. Him learning how to say these lines. It was really adorable. Then you go, all 5 frequencies?
All 5 frequencies?
Okay, one more time. All 5 frequencies?
All 5 frequencies?
That was super close. Okay, one more time. You ready? All 5 frequencies?
All 5 frequencies?
Super close. Okay, yeah, one more time. All 5 frequencies?
All 5 frequencies?
We almost got the frequencies.
Frequencies.
Yeah, free.
Kin.
Free. Quen.
Frequen.
Seas.
Frequencies?
Yeah.
Frequencies?
Yeah. So all 5 frequencies?
All 5 frequencies?
Yeah, nailed it. Oh man, you're really good at this. And it was really interesting to me. He has a very musical ear. He definitely got that from his mama. His pitch is really good. His melodic retention is really, really good. He can hear songs. He remembers them. And his ability to remember words and lyrics is way better than mine by a lot. And so I was just really impressed, how quickly he was able to do that. And I think speaking and language, there's a lot of crossover with music and singing and speaking and language, I think for obvious reasons. And when you have a more musical ear, because it really is about hearing these sort of musical sounds when you hear people talking and being able to make the connection of what you're hearing and being able to get it to come out of your mouth. You know, I think he really got it from his mom. He really lucked out there. But yeah, it was just cool to see. Super fun to do. Super amazing. You know, I couldn't be more delighted to have him involved and have it be a really fun experience. He's really proud of it. It's like everywhere we go, it's like, Dad, play the video. You know, he wants to show it to all his friends and all of our friends and everybody. So it was a cool experience. So if you didn't happen to catch this particular thing, I did put it on my Instagram, but it actually got cut off. So I don't know how to use any of this social media stuff. I'm an old person, you know. And so I posted it as a reel, as a 90-second limit. It cut it off, but I ended up leaving it because it cut it off in a really funny place, a place that kind of made sense. So I just left it. And then it's on the UTA YouTube channel. So, I mean, it's only 2 minutes. So here, I just want to, for anybody that didn't catch this, this is my proudest, you know, moment in a promo video. Here you go.
Hello everybody, I'm Eric Valentine. I'm talking really fast because the new Undertone Audio UTEQ500 does so much, there's no other way I can fit it all into a 1-minute video. The UTEQ500 is a 3-band super parametric EQ that can recreate the shapes and curves of any other 3-band EQ out there, and it does endless things that no other EQ can do. It starts pretty straightforward. You can boost or cut a peak shape like any other EQ, but it has a huge range of adjustment for the Q. You can go from a Q of 0.3 all the way to a Q of 10.
Wow, that's a really narrow Q.
You're darn right it is, and this is where things get crazy. We add this thing called shape control. It allows you to blend between a peak shape and a shelf shape. As you turn the shape control clockwise, the peak starts turning into a shelf, and every version of a shelf along the way. That means you could recreate the shelf shape of any other EQ on the planet.
Well, no other EQs can do that.
You darn right they can't. Let's put this to a test. API 550 shelf EQ? Check. Classic Neve 80 series shelf EQ? Check.
Does it even do that undershoot thing that Neves do?
Of course it does. SSL E-Series Shelf EQ? Check. G-Series Shelf EQ? Check. Helios Type 69 Shelf EQ? Check. Mag Airband?
What the heck is an airband?
I don't know, but the UTEQ500 can make the same shape.
All 5 frequencies?
Yes, all 5 frequencies. Trident A-Range Shelf EQ? Check. Pultec EQP1A? Check.
Can it do the thing where you boost and cut the same frequencies?
It can definitely make the same shape. Now I want to talk about some of the things that the UTEQ500 can do that none of these other EQs can do. First is that the Q control is still active when creating a shelf shape.
Well, what does that do for you?
Well, you can make all these crazy looking shelf shapes. Second is that it has a notch filter mode that allows you to completely cancel out the selected frequency.
Dad, should you tell them about the variable phase mode?
There's not enough time. We'll have to save that for another video.
Okay.
The Undertone Audio UTEQ500 is like having every 3-band EQ ever made and so much more.
Wow, Dad, that's a really cool EQ.
You're darn right, son.
So there it is. Again, it was just an absolute joy to do. So now I want to get into the next thing. So I did the short video, then I just put out a more deep dive video that really gets into all the details about how the EQ functions, and I recorded some stuff so I could demonstrate it, and created this sort of challenge for myself of like, I'm going to record 4 things and use, you know, a vintage EQ for each thing, and come up with a setting that I think, you know, sounds really good for drums, bass, guitar, Wurlitzer keyboard, and then try and recreate those things exactly with just our little 500 series UTEQ500. And so, you know, I had to record a thing. It's always an interesting process, you know. I have to sit down and just come up with something that I think will be appropriate for this demonstration, and something that I feel good about sort of putting out in the world, just even musically. You know, I don't want to put some crappy, you know, kind of lame sounding music out there. I don't know, this may still be lame, but at least something that's not lame to me, you know? and so there is a little bit of a standard there, and so, you know, I try to come up with something that's going to be listenable, or at least, you know, something that is not going to be distractingly bad, you know. And so it's a little bit of a process there. I have to write something, even though there's no lyrics, there's no singing involved in this. But, you know, just to try to come up with something. And it's always interesting to me, like, when I sit down to do that and I'll hear something, you know, I mostly hear, like, the feeling of what I want it to be. And start poking around on instruments and try and come up with something. I knew I wanted to have an acoustic guitar, and, you know, start trying to figure it out, and start plinking around, come up with something, and it's, you know, sometimes I don't get there, but it's interesting to me that most of the time I end up navigating my way there and get something that's like, okay, there it is. That's what I was hoping for. And so it at least serves what I wanted it to do. And so I wanted to show, capturing these elements and a little bit of this process. All of this stuff got recorded in the control room in Vermont. And so it was the first time I've recorded stuff in the control room. I had recorded a lot of stuff in this room, and this room was really musical. I got some amazing results recording stuff in this room. And so it was my first opportunity to try that in Vermont. And so here's the beginning of it, me recording just a little drum thing, and I ended up in the control room. Here you go, check it out.
So time to record some drums. This one's supposed to be really dry, and I actually started out in the big room. I'll show that in a second, but I ended up in here in the control room. And so for this, I found myself a little corner, get some low end build up for the kick drum. There's a one mic sound, very simple. I'm just gonna play a little groove, put a little acoustic guitar, maybe some whirly bass. But I'll show you where I started. And me and my drum chasing, I end up running out of time now. But so I'm in this giant cavernous room, and I'm like, I want to make it really dry. So this drum fort. And sometimes that's really cool. That's actually what we ended up doing at RCA. And so this is where I started with the drums in here. I got impatient. I didn't even bring the floor tom in, not playing it anyway. So trying all kinds of stuff just to dry up the sound here. Sometimes it's really cool if you can, build a little fort in a big room. You get sort of the low end characteristics of the big room, but this more intimate thing. But in this case, did not pan out. So the cool thing is opportunity to hear drums in the control room. So and it definitely won for this. And I'm using this AEA 44 for the drums. This is kind of my favorite one mic drum spot, because like if you had a floor tom here and a rock tom here, you kind of sneak it in between those two, right where the ride cymbal would normally go, but put that somewhere else. And then you get a really even balance of like the kick drum, the batter side of the kick drum, the snare. It's not too close to the hi-hat, so you're not getting too much cymbals, and you can get an even balance of the two toms. Like if I had toms going, it sort of works out in that way as well. So there we go. First time recording drums in the fucking tuborama, and it's pretty sweet. Yeah, you'll hear it in this thing.
So there it is. You saw the little setup, and that's about as simple as it gets. Drums in a corner, super dry room, RCA 44 on there. So I ended up capturing that. It just went straight into the computer. For this, there was no tape machines or stuff involved. I wanted to really sort of emphasize what the equalizers were doing, and so it all went straight into the computer. So there's a section here where I show how the drums got captured by the RCA 44 and the EQ moves that were done and all of that stuff. So here you can check that out. It sounds like what you'd expect. It's an RCA 44. It's a little flat sounding. It definitely needs to be just hyped up a little bit, a little more high end, a little more low end. So here it is. The EQ is on a hardware insert here. And you can see me turn it on and off here. So that's without it. Not much question about when it's on. But it's cool. It opened it up a nice way, so I boosted a bunch of the shelf, which I think they refer to as a 10K shelf, but it's that weird thing where there's like an undershoot and then it comes up. And then boosted some mid-range in there, just to get the snare drum to have a little more bark to it. And then boosted a bunch of low end on there, way down at 35 hertz, just to get some cool low subby kick drum stuff on there. I'll show you the UTEQ500. That is right here.
So that's with it on. There it is without it. There it is back on again. Sometimes it's better to do just loop a very short section when you're really trying to A/B something. So you know you're always hearing the same part of the performance when you're comparing two things. So let's do that for a second here with these two EQs. So here's, start on the Neve.
So you can hear how close these things are, and it's a really interesting part of this. And I talk about it a little bit in the promo video, but I kind of want to get into it a little deeper here, because it starts to cross over into other areas of this whole issue. I'm pulling up the graphs of these EQ settings so everybody can see how close I was able to get. And the Neve 1064 was by far the most challenging of the 4 EQs that I had to replicate. I had 3 bands going, and the way the bands interact can be very complex. And I think my 1064 is very old, so I mean, obviously it's old. It came in a console that was originally built, I think, in 1970, maybe 71. It was an 8028 or 8038, something like that. It was the console that was bought for the band T-Ride when we got signed to a record deal and were given a budget, and we were like, okay, we're going to build an amazing studio. Everybody said Neves are great, and so we bought this fucking Neve console that had 32 1081s in it, and then it had this sort of like reverb return section that had the 1064s. I ended up selling off the 1081s, but I kept the 1064s. I had 4 of them, and then I sold a couple of them off. But I still have a pair of those. Those things have been kicking around for 50 years. And I don't recall, I don't think I have ever recapped them. And so some of the things that were going on when I pulled it up this time, and I've done this before, like when we were developing the equalizer for the console back in like 2008, 2009, this is quite a while ago, I did this same thing where I pulled up the 1064 and was doing shapes and comparing them and matching them with the undertone EQ and doing all that stuff then. And this time around, there were some weird aberrations in the 1064 in the curve that were just not what they normally are, and I think it's drifted a little bit. Certainly the capacitors are getting old enough, that could definitely be happening. And so it was really challenging. And so you can see here how close I was able to get, and there are some differences. So like right here, just so you get an idea of the scale, each one of these lines is a dB. And, so right around here, this is like 40 hertz. There is like a 0.3 dB difference down here. And that is potentially enough to be audible in there. And so it was as close as I could get it. And then all in here, this is all, within a 1/10 of a dB or better. And then you can see the difference here where the Neve, which is the yellow line, sort of tapers off more. There may have been an overall filtering of the low end that is not going on the undertone EQ, and so this sort of continues to go up there. Similar thing in the high frequencies where on all of these 80 series Neve EQs, as soon as you engage the EQ circuit, put the EQ in, there's this roll-off that happens in the high frequencies. And typically that's done, designers will put that in there to protect the circuit from RF interference so it doesn't pick up like radio signals and stuff. And so you can see that going on here, and it's not going on in the undertone EQ, so I didn't bother to try and replicate that. I had to use all 3 of the bands in there to just match the low frequency boost, the mid boost, and the shelf. You know, if this was an MPEQ1 where I have 4 bands and I have the filters, I would have easily been able to replicate that as well, or even replicate this also. But with only 3 bands and no filters, you know, got to get as close as you can. And so this thing, it sounds very, very close. I'm going to do a whole other round where I'm going to really, really do some serious blind A/B listening. I did some quick ones to make sure that I felt it was close enough to really sort of, you know, get the point that was trying to be made in this video. But after this video, I'm going to do another thing that's really going to like emphasize the blind A/B aspect of this that I'm curious about. So we'll see if what happens with that. So yeah, so this is how close I could get. And I know listening on a video, it's me A/Bing back and forth quickly, and you're listening through YouTube or whatever, there's diminished resolution. It may not be enough to really be able to hear clearly what's going on, but, you know, audibly, it's very difficult to tell these apart, maybe impossible. I still have yet to, like, really, really take the time, you know, spend, you know, a good, like, 20, 30 minutes really, like, immersing myself in doing a blind A/B test with these, because this is potentially audible here. And so as we get into more of these examples, we'll talk about what the plan is for this blind A/B video, because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all these files available for everybody to check out in your own setup and really be able to listen to these. So. And I can talk about the pluses and minuses of doing doing that. So, moving on. So the next thing I recorded was the acoustic guitar. So here is the acoustic guitar setup and me trying to play that. All right, see if I can play this thing. Finger picking, not really my thing here. So I'm playing the drums here, and I've been playing guitar much, going straight from no guitar straight to steel string with a part where I have to just hold the string. Oh man, these are hurting. Those are hurting right there. Okay. Well, not too shabby. We'll do one more. Now that I'm playing to a drum track, I can do some punching here. Try and save some time. Oh boy. Okay. Close enough. Close enough for a thing. All right. All right, so you can see the setup there. Me stumbling through some finger-picking guitar. As I said in the video, definitely not a style of guitar playing I had ever really cultivated over the years. It's something I want to get better at, so I'm gonna spend more time doing that. I have plans for some stuff that I'm gonna record next year that is definitely more finger-picky centric. This is one of the things that I really want to do when I get into this next round of stuff next year. I think I'll finally be able to get into this, where I'm going to be really going after recording some of my own songs that have just been around forever. They're kind of too personal or too weird or whatever to have ever found a home with any of the artists that I've worked with, and I'm going to use these as an opportunity to like really go after some very specific sonic things that I want to crack the code on, and share the whole experience. That's really part of the plan here. Like, take people through the whole process, like the song idea, the writing, learning to play the stuff, recording it, mixing it, the whole thing. And in this video, you know, you see me screwing this part up. I keep fucking it up. It's not really my thing. To play, you know, finger-picky guitar, and I want to show those moments. I'm really gonna like try and set my fucking ego aside and show the moments that are hard, because like I was just talking about with talking fast, all you have to do is just do it a bunch, you know? Like, I don't really feel like I was given any sort of extraordinary musical gift, you know? Like, somebody like Grace, it's very obvious that she has some sort of extraordinary ability to sing. She's always had it, by all accounts. She had it since she was 2 years old. She still has it now. She's never had to really try or practice or think about it or whatever. It's always just been there for her. Not like that for me. And whatever musical skill or ability or musicality I have, and I was drawn to music, and there were things that I think came to me relatively easy, or came to me, I was able to progress fast enough that there was this like positive feedback and this sense of satisfaction that it's like, oh, if I do this, I'll get better at it, and that's satisfying and it feels good. And so I'd keep doing it. And so I want to show that process, because I think it's really important. I think a lot of times people are presented with stuff where you see more the end result, or the inclination of an artist is to show ultimately them being brilliant, you know, at the end of a long process of a lifetime of practicing, or a bunch of practicing a specific new idea or part, and then show the end result, but don't generally show the effort that it might take to get there. And I think that's so important to share. And, you know, I feel confident enough in my ability when I sit down and really put my mind to something, and it's like, hey, I want to learn how to play this finger-picky guitar part, that I will fucking get there. It'll take some work, but I'll put in the work that it needs to get there. And I think it's important for everybody to know that you don't have to expect yourself to just sit down and be brilliant. I think all of those people that are extraordinary musicians have spent hours and hours and hours and days and years playing and cultivating a skill set that becomes available to them when they sit down and play. And these days, you know, like, I don't get to play all the time. You know, like I said in the video, you know, my fingers were dying holding down that one stupid shape, you know, on that acoustic guitar. I don't play guitar very much, you know, and I don't have calluses built up right now. There's times when I have had calluses built up, and, you know, I can play guitar all night. But no, not for that one. Even just minutes, you know. I was playing that guitar for maybe 9-10 minutes. It was unbelievably painful. So I really want to show that, and show the moments where I can't play it yet. And I will rehearse and take the time, and I know the process of rehearsing, and I know how to do it in an efficient way to try and get me there as quick as possible. If there's something I can't play, you know, that process of slowing it down, taking it bit by bit, breaking it into pieces, starting to establish the muscle memory and getting to a place where I don't have to think about it, my hand just does it, you know, whether it's guitar or drums or whatever, or keyboards, you know. And so I think that's going to be a really, really important thing to show in the process, so people know it's like, if you can't play something right now, you will be able to play it, you know, if you spend some time with it and just invest. And I think often it's less than you think, you know, and often probably it takes less time to practice something and play it correctly than it would to go in and have to edit it all and try and fix it, you know. And then you come out the other side being a more capable player, you know. So I don't know, that's just part of the vision that I have for down the road, and some of these video clips are starting to just kind of hint at that, and I'm excited about that. I think it's going to be a cool part of it. So yeah, you can see the setup there. I did. That's another RCA 44 that I have. That one's an original RCA. It's beautiful on acoustic guitar. It ended up being a little bit boomy, but it created an opportunity where I had to do some EQing on it. So, so you can check out sort of the end result. You know, I used an API 550A to represent sort of like the vintage EQ, and then I had to replicate that with the undertone. So here it is. So here's the acoustic guitar with no EQ on it. So then there it is with the API 550. Without the EQ. There it is on again. And so with this, I needed to just pull out some of the resonance of that low A in this little fingerpicky riff thing. It was just kind of overwhelming, taking up too much space, not enough room for the bass guitar. Once you get that in there, I ended up cutting around 100 hertz. That was right around the fundamental frequency of that low A. And then boosting, it looks like around 600 hertz. And so the curve looks like this. So there's the cut at around 100 hertz. There's the boost around 600 hertz. And then look at the undertone match of it. I mean, you can't even distinguish the lines. They're so close. This one was really, really easy to match. There is a little bit of that difference, you know, in the very extended low frequencies. This is all down below 20 hertz. And then there's a little bit of a difference way, way up here. This is probably a couple tenths of a dB at 20K. So those are extremely close. I think it would be almost impossible to hear the difference of these, even in a blind test. But so let's hear the undertone EQ real quick. Here it is. There it is without the undertone EQ. There it is back in again. And then let's A-B these two, and we'll do a shorter loop again. Okay, so, you know, I showed the graphs in there and played everything, and you could hear what's going on there. So we will do, how about the Wurlitzer next? So the Wurlitzer was pretty straightforward. I wanted to mic it. I mic'd it with an RCA 77, one of these ones. I've talked about them before. You know, this was a moment, sort of an end of the year purchase, you know, for tax kind of thing. This is a very indulgent purchase, but somebody was selling a pair of RCA 77s that were virtually unused. They were made in the 70s and were absolutely pristine. I couldn't believe how clean. They literally look brand new and they sound unbelievable. So I used one of those on the speaker on the Wurlitzer. You know, this little built-in speaker's got this cool kind of, you know, dirty, dusty old vibe to it. So here's a little clip of that setup. Check it out. All right, give this a shot. A little whirly. Pan opposite the guitar should be nice. A little there, vibrato on there. Should be doable. Yeah, so that part was easy enough to play. I think of the instruments, you know, that I generally am asked to play or choose to play, I'm probably the least capable on keyboards. You know, that was, I started on drums, and then there was also guitars and basses around, so then I started doing guitar and bass stuff. And then only a little bit of keyboards, and I have to say I really regret not having gone through that thing early on of just establishing the foundation of playing piano properly, you know. And so I've just sort of like stumbled through it and figured out my own ways to do it, and have a lot of bad habits. And so playing any sort of keyboard instrument is not one of my strong points. And so, but yeah, you can see the setup there, the little RCA on the speaker. And so with this one here, I'll show you the section from the video where that sound, you know, is captured and gets EQ'd, and then there's you know, the same process of replicating that EQ with the undertone EQ. Here it is. So here's the original sound. And then here it is with the EQ turned on. So it's a similar thing. I'm just kind of like pulling out some kind of, you know, excessive low end, and then adding some mid-range. And so if you look at the EQ, I'm boosting 8 dB at 1.5K, and then turning down this low frequency shelf about 9 dB. I think this is down at like 50 hertz is so what I seem to remember. I don't believe it's labeled on there, but yeah, it's around 50 hertz. You can boost or cut down there. And so then did the same thing with the undertone EQ. So here's the undertone version. And I'll turn it off. Yeah, so there it is, just a little too boomy. And that nice mid-range growl in there. We can check out the curves on that. So this is these are captures that I did on these two EQs. And again, like, the lines are so close that you can't even distinguish them in the really, you know, relevant part of the spectrum. Again, in the extended part of the spectrum, that's where you start to get some variations. It looks like the Siemens EQ, the W295, had one of these sort of overall roll-offs in it. I didn't bother to replicate that part of it. This is all, you know, like above. It's not barely even a dB, even all the way up at 20K. And then all the way down here, there's, you know, some bumpiness in the low end. It's a little smoother on the undertone, but they sort of average out to be about the same down there. But in the crucial sort of mid-range stuff, man, it was very easy to pretty much exactly replicate this curve. I mean, this is a peak EQ, so that's easy to begin with. But then the way it sort of added up with this low frequency cut was really easy to replicate. So yeah, we'll do a quick little loop of just that. So there's undertone. Okay, so you can see that was, you know, it's similar to the guitar. There was just like pulling out some lows, boosting some mids, and again, it was very easy to replicate these curves. So then the next thing was the bass guitar, and this was sort of an interesting part of it. I got to pull out my B15, which I haven't used for a long time. I've been really into using this Magnetone 460 for bass guitar. It's been really, really wonderful for that. It's all over, you know, Grace's record. I even ended up using, you know, it wasn't the 460, but a Magnetone amp. I reamped Mike Elizondo's upright acoustic bass through a Magnetone amp for the Nickel Creek album. It was a really cool sound on that too. But for this, yeah, I wanted to pull out the old B15, and I ended up blending the two amps together, and it might be my new favorite rig because they complement each other in a really really cool way, except for one thing, is that the phasing adds up in a really screwed up way, where when the lows are in phase, the mids and highs are out of phase. And when you flip it the other way, you get the mids and highs, but then the lows are out of phase. When I was actually just trying to get sounds and record this stuff and get this promo video together, I put up the sound, I think it's Sound Radix, that company, they have this auto align plugin. So I put that on there and did the read, and it came back, and it's like, whoa, it does the thing. It definitely corrected for that, because it does these, you know, spectral phase adjustments where it is adjusting the phase in particular ranges of the frequency spectrum, and it did a cool job of it. So then this is one thing that the undertone EQ is capable of doing, and I wasn't even planning on having this part of the demonstration, but you know, the way these amps ended up adding up, it was like, oh fuck, you know, this is going to be a cool demonstration of this. And so then I sat down to do that phase adjustment with the undertone EQ. And so with the undertone EQ, you can put it in this mode that makes it an all-pass filter. All-pass filter means that there's a filter applied, but all of the frequencies pass through. And so like a low-pass filter means that the low frequencies pass through below whatever frequencies, like high pass, obviously, all the high frequencies pass through above the frequency selected. Band pass, you know, so all the frequencies, you know, in the band in the frequency that's selected, that's what passes through, and everything else, you know, gets filtered off. So all pass means all the frequencies come through, but there is a filter being applied to it, and so what you're left with is all of the phase shift that is introduced by filters. And so the undertone EQ has a mode where it does that. You can turn it into an all-pass filter. I put it in the mode where it would reverse the phase somewhere in the mid-range, and then everything above that, and then blend it to the two amps together, and lo and behold, there it is. Wow, look at that. Now the lows are in phase, the mids and everything above are now in phase, and you get this cool sound. And it was very interesting hearing the difference between the sort of digital version, which I think in certain ways is probably much more detailed than what the EQ can do. The EQ is just one move, but I have more control over what the EQ does. I can adjust where it's doing it, and you know, the shape or slope of the EQ move that's doing it. And so with the auto align thing, it is truly auto, you know, like you just go do it and it does it. Maybe there's I don't want to speak out of turn here, because like I'm relatively new to the plugin. It might have more control and adjustability that I'm not familiar with, but so far the only thing I've done with it is just it does its thing, it gives you a result, and there you go. It was interesting to hear the difference between those two, and so here is the section where I do those and compare, you know, doing it with the EQ versus doing it with the plugin, and what the results are. Check that out. These are the two bass amps that I had for this. You know, I dusted off my old B15. I've been using a Magnetone a lot for bass recently, and I love it. It sounds like this. It's got a cool, like, you know, plucky little mid-range in there, and then a nice deep subby thing, but it sounds a little hollow on the high notes. And here's the B15, and it's a little rounder for the high notes, but definitely doesn't have the subby low end. And so I wanted to blend the two together. So you blend them together, and it's like, where did all my plucky stuff go? So you try reversing the phase on it. I'd already flipped this earlier, but you know, these were my options. Basically, you lose all the low end, but then you have all the cool mid-range. The other way, you get the low end, but you lose all the cool plucky attack. So what that means is that the way these two amps are adding up, the phasing is changing across the frequency spectrum with the signal coming from these two amps. And so what is in phase for the low frequencies ends up being out of phase for the mids and high frequencies. So you have to be able to reverse the phase of either the lows or the mids and highs in order to have everything sort of add up more. And so you can do that with the undertone EQ. So I'm going to leave this reversed this way. So it sounds kind of dull. This is, right? And what I'm going to do is use the undertone EQ to reverse the phase of just the mid-range and everything above. Okay, so this is a hardware insert. I'm using this UTEQ500 right here, and the setting is notch mode. The gain control is turned all the way up because that's what puts it into this thing where this phase reversed filtered information gets turned all the way up until it's flat again to the original source signal, but everything from the frequency point and above will be phase reversed. In this case, I've selected a frequency, looks like it's about probably 400 hertz, somewhere around there. So I'll get kind of that more knocky mid-range and everything above it, and it's in a shelf shape. And so that's what makes it, if I was in a peak shape, then what it would do is it would just reverse that 400 hertz and some of the stuff around it, but not everything above. So for this, I want to just know that at that sort of 400, 450 range, the phasing gets reversed, and then it just reversed all the way up above. And the widest Q for this seemed to be good. Check it out. So that's without the phase adjustment. And then all that mid-range comes back because now it is in phase up there. There it is without it. Now we got all our mid-range back. And then I thought this was interesting, because there's these plugins now that can do this, and they do it sort of automatically. So this is Sound Radix. This is Auto Align 2, and theoretically it will do the same thing. I did the thing. I let the two tracks play in for 30 seconds. It did an analysis and made a correction, and you can see that it is doing a spectral phase correction here. And so, it's probably somewhere in the mid-range. It's changing things around, And so let's compare these. So yeah, so I have my correction going on here. So that's the auto align. And then there's doing it with the UTEQ. And it's interesting, there is something that still sounds a little bit phasey in the auto align thing. And this sounds more natural to me. I don't know, it may have just been sort of random to this particular circumstance, but okay, so that was the result. You could hear the difference between the two, and listening to it now, it sounds like the auto align thing is probably lining up more of the frequencies across the spectrum. And then just looking at it again, I now notice that it actually did an overall timing shift in there. So it offset it by 49 samples. And so that may have been the little bit of phasiness that I was still hearing, because I had two amps set up. The microphones were the same distance from each of these amps. And even though there might be small differences in how the speaker might be set back in the cabinet versus the grill cloth, stuff like that, there might be some very small differences there. They did not sound like they needed to be moved. The timing needed to be moved between the two. I have a video clip that shows the bass setup. You can check this out and hear these bass amps in the room. They sound pretty wonderful in the room. Here's the bass setup.
All right, so I think we got a cool bass vibe happening. I played a DI in. We're reamping it. So here, I'm just gonna hit play so we can kind of hear it out here. and then this is a magnetone here. And they seem to complement each other really well. And then I've got, this is a first, I got this, AKG D30 not too long ago, so I want to try that on bass. And so I got that on the B15, and then a 67. It was still out in the room from when I was doing all the guitar stuff. I think they're gonna have really cool. There's some, I gotta line up the phasing a little bit, but once I get all that dialed in, I think it's gonna be super sweet. Because the Ampeg sounds really good on the high notes, but it doesn't have like the real deep resonance, and then the Magnetone has the really cool deep resonance happening. So I think we got ourselves a bass sound. All right, I'm gonna have to like blend the two together and then make one sound out of it, and then I'll EQ that, because this is all gonna be for the 500 series EQ thing, and I need one bass signal. So I'll get as far as I can with the blend and then finish it off with some EQ. All right, cool.
Okay, so that was, the bass setup. And you can see, like, the microphones are really, like, set right, the same distance from the amp. There really shouldn't be a need to have to move the overall timing of those microphones. And I think that probably contributed to why, to my ears, the EQ version sounded more organic to me, because there was no offset of the timing between them. So I also have a little clip of me actually playing the bass part. That was part of this process, and there was sort of a discovery in that. It's just, the process of figuring this stuff out. I had, a rough idea in my head of what I wanted this thing to feel like and sound like. I played the drums by themselves first. I just played a drum part and then had to play everything to that, no click. So everything is kind of loose. I'm really preferring that these days. I don't know, I've sort of lost my attraction to click tracks. So this was the moment where I was gonna play the bass, because I did drums first, then I did guitar, because I was pretty confident about what the guitar was gonna be, and then I had to just figure out a bass part that would work with the guitar and drums, and figure out a whirly part that would work with those three elements. So I think I did it in that order: drums, guitar, bass, whirly. So here's me recording the bass part.
All right, do a little bass. My old trusty Univox nylon flat wounds. This thing probably been on, more recordings than any of my other basses. This is definitely my favorite. Yeah, this is a good one. Right now it's just the DI, and then I'll reamp it using a GB tracker. This one is playing kind of soft, playing with my fingers, palm muting, and so I'm able to turn up the gain a little bit on the GB tracker, and let's see what we get here. A little bit of runway here. Yeah.
So after I did that round and I was listening to everything, I was like, the drum part that I ended up playing was pretty busy, and then the bass part felt like it was the guitar part is a little busy. Like the whole thing was just getting way too busy. So then I was like, okay, this bass part's not going to work. So I took another swing on it.
All right, we got to try something a little simpler for the bass part. After listening to it, everybody is playing too much. All right. Here's to playing less.
Yeah, so there you go. I think my instincts for trying to figure out, how to puzzle piece, a bunch of parts together is I feel like it's getting better. And, that may have not been something that I would have caught, in earlier days, that like, there's just too much going on here. And so, you know, I feel like the simpler thing worked better. And that's ultimately what you'll hear. And so then ultimately, once I had, you know, the bass part figured out, I got the phase thing sorted out, and so there was just one signal available, then I EQ'd that with an EQP1A, an original Pultec, the one that I have. I've had for a long time. I was just one of those things. There was an opportunity to get one. Somebody was getting rid of it. It was, you know, not like a steal, but a decent, you know, price on an original one at the time. This was quite a while ago, so it wasn't like wildly expensive. And it's a very unique one. It has a black faceplate on it with white lettering. And it was custom ordered that way by Cherokee Studios in Los Angeles. And when that place shut down, some of their gear went up in the market, and so I ended up getting that one. I ultimately ended up getting one of the new recreation Pultecs, or, you know, it's like the company sort of restarted again by somebody somehow, whatever. I don't know the details of that. But that recreation is, it really is authentic to the original, you know, like those two that I have, one that was made in the 70s and one that was made in the 2020s are really the same thing. They did a good job of recreating that. But so here was the process of coming up with a setting for the bass on a Pultec EQP1A. I ended up using my original one, and then recreating that setting with the Undertone EQ500. Check that out. So here's the original sound, and then here it is with the Pultec. Just tighten up the low end a little bit, a little more like high mid presence in there. It's you know, I'm boosting 3K, and you can see what the curve looks like. Okay, and it was interesting that the setting that I ended up with just ended up looking like this sort of leveling off of the lows, you know, and then here's that, you know, 3K boost in the highs, and then here's the Undertone UTEQ500 doing the same moves. So here they are, matched up super close, you know, probably within 1/10 of a dB down here, you know, dead on the 3K boost up there. So let's compare these two. All right, so there it is. That's the difference, you know, between using those two different EQs. And you could not get more different EQ technology than those two EQs, you know. The Pultec, it's a tube circuit, you know, with inductors and a million transformers. The Pultec is kind of an odd bird, that design. I'm not as familiar with how that thing is put together, but it is unique for sure. And there's quite a bit of color in that thing. I haven't had a chance to really measure it specifically to see, you know, how much harmonic distortion there is. Unquestionably, there's going to be substantially more than this little, you know, 500 series Class AB op-amp EQ. And again, I don't know that it would be possible to pick out in a blind test which one is the original EQP1A and which one is UTEQ500. You know, like, I was stunned how similar these things sounded. You know, like I was saying, at the outset of this thing, I set up some tests, and when I was putting together the setup for Vermont, this is just going to start getting into a whole other larger conceptual thing, because, like, there's the undertone thing that's going on, and I contribute to trying to come up with ideas for products or things that I need and have them build, and then they're welcome to sell to other people, whatever, I don't care. I just, sometimes I just want stuff, you know. The 500 series EQ wasn't necessarily something I need, you know. I have some MPEQ1s and I use those. I have other EQs that I use, you know, like a lot of people, I use plugins at times, you know. So this was a kind of a different experience for me, because it wasn't driven by a specific need that I needed, you know. And so we went through the process, and when I was setting up the Vermont studio, I had recently discovered the RCA console, which is a huge amount of harmonic distortion. I mean, that is just like piles of transformers and tubes, and when you look at it, even just with, you know, the Q3 spectrum analyzer, it's just like, you see all these like harmonic overtones come up on a sine wave, you know. Tons of harmonic distortion. And you know, and I've just had this idea of like, I want to have a setup that really has a sound. As soon as you put stuff through it, it's like, it sounds like that setup. And you can hear it immediately, and that just means like, there's a lot of fucking distortion in that setup, you know? And so I've really been in that mindset. And I even went through the process of like, okay, so if I'm going to be going for this more colored thing, then I'm going to get a bunch of EQs that are going to have a lot more color. And so I went down that road of like, I want to get EQs that have transformers and inductors and are more class A, discrete, or all of that shit, you know? And so I bought these Pultec mid-range EQs. I bought the Neve Portico inductor-based EQs. I got the Buzz Audio ones that are like transformers and inductors. I got a Helios recreation transformer inductor. I basically searched like all the inductor EQs. I've talked about this before. And put them in my 500 series racks, and you know, and started using them. And so then when it came time to really, you know, evaluate this 500 series version of the undertone EQ, I was comparing to a lot of those 500 series inductor-based EQs. And again, because this is just such a mantra within the sort of pro audio world that like you have to have transformers, inductors, class A, discrete, like you need to have those things in order to have a device that is going to have a tone to it or have a certain sort of color to it or whatever. And I was just surprised when I went through really expecting to be able to hear a clear difference between like these 500 series Pultec EQs, definitely inductors, definitely transformers in there. And, you know, when I recreate the shapes and really did some serious blind listening tests, like I could not tell the difference. I was just surprised. And so it's just leading me down this whole other path. And like, I don't know if I want to be the guy out there that's going like, hey, this shit doesn't matter. It's like total sacrilege at this point to even hint that, you know, that like the transformers, inductors, and all this stuff is not really that big of a difference. I don't know, you know, like I've been a big believer in it for a long time. I got a studio full of that shit all over the place, you know, that's got tons of transformers and inductors and tubes and discretes and whatever, you know, germaniums and blah, all of that stuff, you know, it's all over the place in my studio. I got tons of it, you know. But like when you get down to the individual modules of this stuff, like, I don't know, it doesn't seem that audible to me. And so we're going to go down that road. And I think one of the things that might be happening, particularly with equalizers, is that people might be a little bit cavalier about when they're comparing two EQs. Let's say you take like a Neve 1073 and an API 550A, and you want to compare them. And you turn up the 10K shelf on your 1073 and set, you know, the API to 10K and into shelf mode and turn that up, you know, theoretically the same amount. And people are, you know, feel like, oh, wow, the Neve sounds so much smoother or warmer or whatever when you compare two things like that. And there's no doubt to me that 99.99% of what you're hearing is the difference in the slope of those, you know, shelf shapes. And so people might be making these distinctions and attributing them to the topology of the circuit and not taking the time to really make sure that the curves are identical and getting the misconception that some of these differences in technology, you know, the type of transformer or the type of circuit being Class A versus Class AB, are really the determining factors in the difference of the character of a particular EQ. Because until you match up the curves the way you can with analysis software like this fuzz measure software that I use, and you're using an EQ that's capable of matching it that closely, like the undertone EQ can, because you'll never get the shelf to match on a 550A and a Neve 1073. They'll never match. They're done different ways. The shapes are different. There's an undershoot in the Neve that the API doesn't do, and they'll never match. And so you'll never get the opportunity to really compare those other things that are different about the circuit, Class A-B versus Class A. What types of transformers are in this versus what type of transformers in that? What type of inductors? What type of inductors? Like those sort of component level differences become impossible to identify because the difference in the actual shape of the EQ boost that's being done is way, 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 way more audible than any of those tiny little minute things. And so this has just been a very interesting journey for me, checking all this out. And so that's what I want to do next. I'm very curious about the science of all of this stuff, and so I'm excited about this. And I was very hesitant about this, conflicted about it. I'll explain why. And so the next video that I'm going to do, I'm going to make all of these files available, the files that were created for comparing these EQs. You can hear the original files that are uneq'd, and then you can hear all of those 4 elements EQ'd with the original vintage equalizers. So they'll be like the Neve 1064, the Pultec EQP1A, the 550A, the Siemens W295. So you'll hear those versions, and then you will hear the original files, where I recreated all those with the undertone EQs. And so, the way this was done is the original files recorded in the computer. I had all of these EQs available as hardware inserts. And then once I got all the settings and matched them all up and did all the thing, matched the levels, all of that, then I committed all of them. And so they're all committed in the computer. In every case, so every file has the same number of conversions. They all use the same converters. So we're really isolating what the variable is on these things. So in each case, the journey to get there is identical except for what EQ is being used. So it really should be a good way to see how much of these differences really matter, So that's what I want to do, and this is why I'm hesitant about it. So I'm basically going to put these files out into the world and tell people, hey, can you tell these apart? Do a blind listening test. I have a feeling people are not really going to be incentivized to really challenge themselves to do this listening test because I think if you really do it right, the end result will be, I can't pick these out in a blind test. And nobody really wants to be that person in case there's somebody that can hear it. And you have to sit there and go like, well, why can I not hear it? I want to be a big Swiftie hearing everything super audio engineer person, so I should be able to hear this difference if somebody else can, And so people are going to be incentivized really to say that they can hear it, and maybe not be as diligent or committed to, the purity of really how to do this test. And so I'm going to try and really lay it out in there, And then I'm going to be in the position of having people coming back to me saying like, I can totally hear the difference and I love the Neve better than your EQ or whatever, So I'm sure that's probably going to happen. And then I'm sort of put in the position, I'm sort of in the defensive position of like, hey, if you want to come to my studio and do this blind listening test, then I'll believe you. Because unless this is really done correctly, and I've done a million blind listening tests, it's really hard to know. These differences are that minute. And so if you listen to these things knowing what they are and are convinced in your mind that the vintage EQ is going to have a particular quality, you will hear it. I promise you. That's how it works. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to throw it out there, and we'll see what happens. I'm just very curious about all this stuff, probably to my own detriment. So that is going to be the next thing that I throw out into the world. I'm going to figure out a time to do that and put it out there. So then the last thing that might be worth hearing in this is just the collection of all of the instruments together, so you can actually just hear the whole thing. And so here is a clip of these 4 elements and how they added up together, and the difference, whatever difference there might be between using the vintage EQs versus these new, you know, undertone EQs. And so you can check that out. Here it is. So there it is, you know, my little loop I came up with. It was fun to do. I'm dying to get into doing some music again. Every little, like, kind of crumb of time that I have to actually sit down and play some instruments has been really, really satisfying for me. So more of that is going to happen next year. I think, I'm hoping it's all going to come together. What I have planned for it, I think will be really, really, really fun. Definitely be fun for me, so hopefully other people will enjoy it too. I'm going to follow up soon. You know, hopefully there's something interesting or informative in there. There's certainly lots of information about EQs, and this whole thing about, you know, EQ technology, components, and harmonic color and stuff is a really interesting journey. You know, hopefully that's interesting for you as well. You guys, I'd love to take all of you on this journey with me. I'm going to continue to drill down into this and see where it leads. So I will see you the next time with some sort of crazy A/B video or something. I'm also going to do another round of answering questions soon. I got some time here in Topanga, so I'm going to get caught up on that. There's a bunch of amazing questions that I got listed up, queued up, ready to dig into. So I'm excited about that. So I will see you the next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.